Breaking news here into CBS Sports HQ. The new AP Top 25 college football poll is out, and we saw 3 top 5 teams lose, which means we're going to have some changes here. And how about that? My eyes go straight to number 4, Ole Miss, up 9 spots. Ohio State still on top. Oregon up 4 spots to number 2. Miami 3. Look at that. We have a brand new top 2, 4, and 5. Also, Alabama sneaking into the top 10, up 7 spots. We go further down the poll here, a lot of movement. You see a lot of red, a lot of dropping. Georgia down 7 spots to 12. LSU down 9 to 13. Florida State, though, huge drop after being upset on the road Friday night at Virginia, down 10 spots to number 18. 5 more teams here on the AP Top 25 poll. We have some new entrants. Virginia, from the aforementioned upset victory over Florida State, moves into the top 25 at number 24, and Arizona State squeaking back in here at number 25. Let's welcome in Damien Harris, and joining us remotely, Brad Crawford. I'm Emily Proud, and I mentioned it, guys. 3 top 5 teams lose. We knew there was going to be a lot of shakeups at the top, but let's start with number 2. In Oregon. Is this the right spot for them? I think there's some people campaigning that they should be the number 1 team over Ohio State.
I think that when you look at Ohio State and Oregon, they're pretty evenly matched, right? They haven't played a ton of competition. Oregon, they just won at Penn State last night, which is a tough environment. And Ohio State just won at Washington, which is another tough environment. So I think where we had Ohio State previously at number 1, I think it's fair to keep them there. But Oregon, by no stretch of the imaginations, we can't sit here and pretend like this isn't one of the top 1 or 2 teams in all of college football. So I think they're evenly ranked. I think that it doesn't really matter. I mean, they're going to play each other. They're going to face each other. So it'll play out the way that it needs to in the end.
Yeah, despite Oregon beating Penn State on the road and having a top 5 win, one of the best signature wins of college football this season, I'm okay with Ohio State having the top spot. Damien mentioned, the season opening win over Texas. And let's not forget, the Buckeyes beat what could be an 8 or 9 win Washington team yesterday on the road and did it with defense, holding Damien Williams and Jonah Coleman, 2 of the Big Ten's best playmakers, outside of the end zone for 4 quarters. So Ohio State was equally impressive yesterday, like the Ducks, but I know primetime, whiteout environment in Happy Valley, a lot of people like Oregon over Ohio State right now. I'm okay with the Buckeyes still being in that top spot.
Yeah, Dan Lanning's first win over a top 5 team on the road. I don't know if you guys saw that clip of him after the game, let out a yell. I mean, that was cathartic, and I'm pretty sure we would have seen it on the other side if James Franklin would have won that game. So speaking of, Penn State down to number 7 in this top 25 poll. Brad, how much, wiggle room do they have as it pertains to the college football playoff? This was obviously a big loss, but...
Yeah, just a little bit of wiggle room. You would have liked to have seen Penn State win this home game against Oregon if you're any Lions fan, but there's 2 games left against ranked teams, Indiana and Ohio State. As long as the Nittany Lions split those games and finish with 10 wins, they're going to be a playoff team. Now, if they lose to the Hoosiers and the Buckeyes, finish 9-3, miss out on a chance at the Big Ten championship, then you start to worry about a 4th or 5th SEC team getting in, maybe a 2nd ACC team, even a 2nd Big 12 team. So if I'm Penn State and James Franklin right now, I am telling my players inside that locker room, all of our season goals are still out in front of us, fellas. When we go to Ohio State and win, we're back on the right track. But you see there, James Franklin said it last night. He was asked, your struggles against top 25 competition, what do you have to say for it? And he said, look, it's factual. There's no changing the narrative until we do it. So, yeah, Penn State right now, 2 games left against ranked teams, and they've got to split both of those to guarantee a playoff appearance.
Yeah, Brad, where I disagree with you here is, and I shouldn't even say I'm disagreeing with you, but James Franklin has been telling his team this for a long time. Yeah. Everything is in front of us. We control our own destiny. If we just go out and perform, Drew Aller, if you can just complete the game for us, if we can go out and end the game in the win column, we'll be all right. Well, guess what? That still has not happened. And yes, they do still have a chance to make it to the college football playoffs. Yes, everything is still ahead of them, but we have to think, what is the confidence level for James Franklin, Drew Aller, and Penn State right now? Because year after year, sometimes week after week, we're having the same conversation about the same team. And let's not forget, who's their next biggest competition? Well, it's going to be Ohio State. Who do they never beat? Well, guess what? It's Ohio State. And now you're already paralysis by analysis, because you know you can't drop that one. And if you win that game, you know you can't drop the next one to a really good and talented Indiana football team. So yes, Penn State, you have a chance, but more importantly, do you have the confidence, especially coming off another big game loss, which is even worse because this time it was at home.
Yeah, I will point out that the numbers say, according to our Sportsline model, this was a college football playoff national championship preview, knowing that these two teams would play each other and one of them would take a loss. So as far as their college football playoff chances, not a whole lot changes after a loss yesterday for Penn State. But like you said, do you have confidence in them to win the big one when we have still yet to see it? I am asking you.
No.
No.
You know the answer. You're really proud. You know me.
All right.
No.
Let's go to Florida State. I don't know about you guys, a little shocked by a 10-spot drop for them. Number 18, of course, still with that big win under their belt in week 1 against Alabama, setting up for a huge showdown against a top 5 team in Miami. Are we in must-win now mode for Florida State?
Well, I think so, because when you look at this team, the big caveat to their success is the defense. And when you look at them and you compare them to the best teams in the country, yes, Thomas Castellanos in the offense, they can get the job done, but who can they stop? Can they stop in Alabama? Can they stop a Georgia? Can they stop an Ohio State or an Oregon? Well, I can't confidently say that right now. And although the win week 1 against Alabama, that was the biggest win of the season at that point. But now it's starting to get less important whenever you lose games that you're supposed to win. People start to forget the big wins that you had that maybe you weren't supposed to.
I mean, don't forget, this is definitely a must-win game for Florida State coming up against Miami, because a second ACC loss to the Canes means the Seminoles are not going to the ACC championship game unless Miami or the Yellow Jackets of Georgia Tech lose 3 games. We know that's not going to happen over the final 8 weeks of the season. So this was a toe stub, so to speak, for the Seminoles on the road against Virginia. You see there, Florida State heading into that game was around plus 500 or so, now at plus 950. So it's a narrative-setting loss for the Seminoles, something Mike Norvell maybe can use inside that locker room to his team to get them fighting back. But it was a bad loss on the road to Virginia, and now Virginia is ranked in the AP poll for the first time under Tony Elliott. See the highlights there. Just pandemonium late in that game.
Oh my God.
Virginia fined, but I'm sure Tony Elliott's okay with UVA paying that fine.
Yeah, the fine was only $50,000 because they're first-time offenders. But if you do it based on just the sheer amount of people and the energy, man, that fine could have been a whole lot more. I did hear, though, Squirrel White is doing okay. I was very nervous for him in the back of the end zone, but seems to be all right. Switching over to the team that Florida State beat week 1, Alabama, a massive victory for them, of course, when it comes to the SEC championship race. But, Brad, how much goodwill did they buy themselves in the eyes of the College Football Playoff Committee?
Well, it was a must-win opportunity, and Kalen DeBoer, hats off to the Crimson Tide, especially Ty Simpson, just magnificent on 3rd down. I think Bama converted 8 of their first 8. He looked great. Heisman front-runner, in my opinion. But moving forward, Alabama as a team, there are still 5 games on this schedule against top 20 competition. At Mizzou's not going to be easy. Coming up against Vanderbilt, knowing what happened last year, Vandy's undefeated. LSU probably going to be banged up a few weeks from now, but they got to play them too. Oklahoma. I mean, Alabama has a loaded slate. So I think the schedule is good enough where if Bama finishes 9 or 10 wins, they're going to be in the playoff. But this was a barometer-type game in the SEC. And I think right now, heading into midseason week 6, Ole Miss and Alabama are the 2 front runners in the SEC, and Georgia's kind of playing from behind at this point.
Yeah, certainly looks that way after this Saturday, a big win for Ole Miss over LSU. Damien, I know you want to talk about your Alabama Crimson Tide, but I do have to ask about Georgia because it feels weird, but I'm going to ask, what's wrong with Georgia's defense?
Well, I've said it once, I'll say it again. Georgia has always been a team that knows when they rush 3 guys, they're going to get pressure. When they rush 4 guys, they're going to get pressure. I mean, sometimes they rush 5, but they always get pressure up front. And that a lot of times has alleviated the back end, the secondary, from really having to do their jobs, although they play it very well. But they don't have to do as much because the pressure is always on the quarterback. Quarterbacks are always trying to get the ball out quick. Well, that's not the problem. We saw that with Tennessee. Joey Aguilar, he had all day long to dissect the defense. Same thing with Ty Simpson. And when your defense doesn't live up to the standard of what Georgia expects, it puts more tension on the offense. It puts more pressure on Mike Bobo, puts more pressure on Gunnar Stockton. And while there's still a competitive offense, that's a lot of pressure going from knowing that you have a defense that's going to get you the ball back, put you in favorable situations, get you in favorable field position. You don't have that anymore. That makes you play a little bit more tight. So I think their defense is actually impacting their offense and the overall success of their team because they're just not getting the same pressure that we're used to seeing Georgia's defense get.
All right, I mentioned that Ole Miss LSU game. Ole Miss, of course, now a top 10 team in the eyes of the AP Top 25 poll. You look at the schedule, things are shaping up nicely for them to walk right into the college football playoff, although we said that last year and we saw what happened last year, so this thing is far from over yet. But Brad, is this a top 10 team when you watch Ole Miss play?
This is a top 5 team, and they are my new SEC frontrunner. And I don't ever speak highly of Lane Kiffin because I know he has coaching gaffes against unranked teams. But look at the schedule. Ole Miss only has Georgia and Oklahoma left as ranked opponents. You split those, you're in the playoff as probably a top 4 seed. And I think the Rebels are not only in the best shape from the SEC to get to the playoff, but they are the favorite because of how well they looked against LSU. And you know, Lane Kiffin watching that Bama-Georgia game last night, he's licking his chops to face a Georgia defensive front that does not get pressure on the quarterback. We saw Trinidad Chambliss several times on third down yesterday afternoon. He got loose against LSU, gave Blake Baker's defense fits, and moved the chain. So Ole Miss is humming right now offensively. You know, they are playing very good on the other side of the football. And surprising to me, Ole Miss might have had a better roster last year, but this year's team as a whole, I think is better and likely Lane Kiffin's best in Oxford.
Yeah, I think everything that Brad just said was absolutely correct. This is a top 5 team. When you look at what they found in Trinidad Chambliss, where the offense is going, the way he's able to use his legs, that's Lane Kiffin's dream right there. Like, he is licking his chops every time he gets to call a play for Trinidad Chambliss. But most importantly, let's talk about the defense. They held Garrett Nussmeier to under 200 yards. They picked him off. They forced turnovers, and they tackled very, very well. That is the sign of a good football team. And I'm even surprised to say that because Lane Kiffin is an offensive guy, but he's got his defense. The past 2 years now, the defense has just gotten better and better, whether it's in terms of pass rush, linebacker play, secondary. They play a style of togetherness defense that is just hard. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier coming into the season, he might have been the #1 quarterback off the board before the season started. They held him to under 200 yards. They made it difficult for him. And again, not understating what they're doing on offense with Trinidad Chambliss, this is just the best Ole Miss team that I think Lane Kiffin has had. And we know with the offensive mind Lane Kiffin is, if he's got a good defense, he's got a good quarterback, he can very well take this team to heights that they haven't been recently.
I'm glad that you sung the praises of this Ole Miss defense because I'm going to play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
A lot of defenses have looked good against this LSU offense. It is a massive surprise that they are not having as much success as we thought they were. And I know that Brian Kelly doesn't want to talk about this offense, but we have microphones and we can talk about it. So, Damien, what is going on the offensive side of the ball for the Tigers?
Everything. Nothing is going right for this team offensively. Garrett Nussmeier doesn't look like what I'm not even going to say what we expected Garrett Nussmeier to look like, but what Garrett Nussmeier expected himself to look like, what Brian Kelly expected himself to look like. When you've got a quarterback, and, you know, we talk about this in NFL terms, right? That is the fate of your franchise. The fact that they cannot protect Garrett Nussmeier is a huge problem. And then on top of that, we've seen drops from receivers. We've seen inconsistent play at the receiver position. And you almost get in a position where you look at Garrett Nussmeier and say, what do you want him to do? Let's not forget to mention the fact they don't run the football. I mean, I know Caden Durham has been banged up, but LSU is one of those teams that seems determined to not run the football because they want to attack you through the air. And when none of those things are working, you have no offense. You know, when you have a good run game, a competent run game, when all else fails, you can just turn around and hand the ball off and hope to get 2 or 3 positive yards and stay ahead of the down and distance. But with that, this LSU offense it's scrambling right now, to say the least.
Yeah.
You know things are bad at LSU when Brian Kelly calls out his star quarterback. We thought this guy was #1 in 2026 NFL draft board, And with that knee injury he suffered during fall camp, he just can't move out there. Right tackle's a big issue right now. There's been some bad guard play. 4 new offensive line starters for LSU, and we are seeing it now entering week 6. They cannot protect Garrett Nussmeier. And as Damien mentioned, there is no run game to speak of. Caden Durham was banged up yesterday. They didn't get anything from him. And on 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, they do not have a power back they can go to and get first downs. We mentioned Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin's offense yesterday pounded LSU at the line of scrimmage, and they did well rushing the passer against Garrett Nussmeier, making him frustrated, down and distance situations. So LSU, they've had this Achilles heel for 4 or 5 weeks now. It just finally showed up in a loss in a big way.
Are we going to talk about this LSU defense?
Do you want to?
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to steer the conversation. So if you wanted to go somewhere else, Emily.
No, I mean Brad mentioned it too. Just not getting a lot of pressure.
All right, Daniel, hold on. Let me pull up my stats right here. You know, I posted it to Twitter, but I just want to make sure clear his throat. LSU's defense last night gave up 500 yards of total offense, 170 in the run game. Ole Miss had 29 first downs, were 2 of 2 on 4th down, and they ran 28. And I will emphasize 28 more offensive plays than LSU. Now, going into this game, we talked about the offense is a little shaky, but there were a lot of people that seemed to think that this LSU defense was going to be the thing that got them to the college football playoffs, hopefully a national championship. Where were they? Where were they? Where was Whit Weeks? Where was the secondary? I mean, Ole Miss had their way, running the ball, throwing the football. I mean, even to be able to convert on 4th and 3 to seal the game. And I mean, there was just nobody covering the receiver. It was almost like they had no presence of mind to even expect something like that. Is that coaching? Is that playing? I don't know. But again, I don't want to just throw all the hay in on the offense and not talk about the defense is not showing up and they are not playing good against good competition.
Well, the big reason that we had a high expectations for this defense, Brad, is because of all the work they did in the offseason. They brought in tons of pieces on both sides of the ball. So how much of the blame is it fair to place on Brian Kelly?
I think all the blame goes to Brian Kelly. He's one of the highest paid coaches in college football. He's top 10 coach pretty much nationwide. A lot of our guys in the preseason had him as one of the SEC's top coaches alongside, Kirby and DeBoer and Steve Sarkisian. The big thing for LSU, too, Ole Miss had 10 penalties in the first half, and LSU trailed by double digits at halftime. That can't happen. There were no changes in the second half offensively for the Tigers. Brian Kelly did not make adjustments. Joe Sloan, the OC, and Blake Baker, DC, everybody deserves blame, but the buck stops with Brian Kelly. He said at SEC Media Days in July, essentially guaranteeing a playoff spot because they had this just nuclear roster coming back through the transfer portal, bunch of guys added, and it just hasn't happened yet.
Brian Kelly himself investing millions into this roster as well. And so they put all their chips in the middle of the table. We'll see what happens for the rest of the season. Still a lot of football left to be played. Don't go anywhere, Brad. Don't go anywhere, Damien. We're going to continue to talk about this. But a reminder, if you want some of that good behind-the-scenes information from our insiders, check out the College Football Insiders podcast. You can watch by scanning that QR code or listen wherever you find your podcasts.